Good evening. My name is Larrin Collins. I'm a senior healthcare administration major, and I'm here to ask some questions to some of our classmates. So guys, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Chase Gulley. I'm a senior accounting major.
I'm Adam Abbott. I'm a business marketing major.
Caden Ross, healthcare administration major.
So for our class, we were supposed to conduct 2 interviews of people that we believe to be ethical leaders. So who did we as a group interview?
We decided to go with Dr. Jason Bentley and Mr. Russell Mass, but we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves.
Jason Bentley, 60 days in, just about 60 days in, as the first vice president of student success. So it's a remodeled position that followed Madonna Weathers, who was here as the vice president of student life for many, many years.
Russell Mass, assistant vice president for student success over the Rec and Wellness Center, student activities, and disability services.
All right, thank you guys. So I'm going to start off by asking you all, what do you believe is leadership? What do you believe is ethical leadership? And why do you consider these 2 men that you interviewed to be ethical leaders?
So leadership is a process where an individual influences a group of individuals to achieve a common goal, to get them going in the same direction. And ethical leadership is being moral. It's influence the lives of others. It's leading people to do the right thing for the right reasons, or servicing the goals of others rather than your own.
Thank you. So why do you consider these 2 men to be ethical leaders?
Both of these men are really good administrators here at the university. They work really well with students. They always put students first. And I think, from a student perspective, the reason we chose them is we've never seen them do anything wrong. We think of them as, administrators, but also as friends. And going back to ethical leadership with that, they always do the right thing. In the interviews with them, it kind of went a little further in depth as to why they are ethical leaders. You'll get to hear some of that later on.
So you all have kind of explained to me why you believe they're an ethical leader, but outside of just being an ethical leader, how would you describe some of their general leadership styles? And give me an example of kind of why you believe they relate to these styles and the definitions of them.
Well, we feel like these guys are both very similar. They're both constantly working with people, and we feel like there's 2 leadership styles that they both follow, and that's follower-centered and relationship-oriented. In follower-centered, you follow the altruistic principle of placing followers before one another, and then relationship-oriented, you just find meeting and being with others, and you want to connect, and you want to have a relationship more than it's just work. You know what I mean?
So with follower-centered, a lot of times you're placing everyone else's plans before your own, which eventually become your plans. And then with relationship-oriented, you're always trying to connect with someone, basically, correct? All right, thank you. So give me an example of why you believe these men represent these leadership styles.
Okay, so while we believe Russell Mass is relationship centered, me, Larrin, and Adam actually work in the same office as him. He's always coming in every day. He takes time out of his day, just ask how you are, good morning, good afternoon, how are you doing? He brings things in to share with the office, cake, donuts, just different things. He's always trying to connect and just be there for you, rather than he's just here for work and that's only it.
What about Dr. Bentley?
I've got to work some with Dr. Bentley, just different roles here, my job here in the office. One thing I really like about him, he's super follower-centered, excuse me. So what he does, once a month, I believe, to my understanding, he has a cabinet that meets, his board basically who work under him. So he kind of gives them that, in the meeting, he facilitates it. And outside of that, they run the meeting themselves. Another thing too, on top of that, he's very transparent. So he gives them the agenda, and then he lets them divide and conquer and take care of it. So I think that's a really cool thing to see him do as an adult that we're starting to pick up on. Is sometimes you have to give that motivation. He's a motivator. He gets people to follow him, and he places them in the right position to do so.
I believe both of these are very good examples of altruism, which shows that everybody, your interests are in the ideas of every single person.
If somebody were to analyze it, they'd say he is an example of a servant leader, right? He's somebody that's trying to serve the interests or other people. It's not the idea of a hero leader, right? That somehow this person is, a savior or knows everything. I don't believe that to be true. I'm interested in participatory work, and that we're doing things in service to one another and to something bigger than ourselves.
Very open to new ideas, but at the same time being very fair and firm about my expectations. I don't mind input, but once we do make a decision, we're all on the same page.
So you've kind of described some of their leadership styles and stuff, but what are some of the leadership theories that we now better understand because of our interviews, and what ways do we better understand them?
I mean, clearly we've learned about a lot of theories, but like 3 that we didn't know the most about that we've learned more from our 2 interviews are teleological, deontological, and ethical theories. Teleological is going to focus on your consequences of actions. Deontological is going to, like, you know, you're duty driven. It relates to consequences, but also like whether it's good, like that's what you're supposed to be doing. And then ethical values, you know, like making the right decisions at the right time when nobody's looking. You know what I mean? Like what's right and wrong.
So ethical theory kind of deals with the rules and principles that are set in place.
Yeah.
Okay. So in what ways do we better understand these now?
I think we better understand these because they're all kind of related. They're both similar leaders, and that's one of the reasons why it's something that we got from both interviews. But it's kind of like levels; they're all together. So you have your rules and your principles, and you have your duty to follow those rules and principles. And if you don't, then there's consequences.
So in what ways do we better understand these leadership theories and why?
I think one example that when we were interviewing Russ, he gave us a real life example. One of the first universities he started working for as a young administrator, he had his boss was actually embezzling money from the university. You know, being a young administrator, he wasn't sure what to do, so he consulted with a few other people. You know, very close, tight-knit circle that he could actually discuss that with without getting out. He decided to take it to the VP of the university. You know, that person did lose their job. You know, but he felt that he did the right thing. He did do the right thing. And then after that, he was respected, you know, by the VP there at the university, who was his boss's boss. It was hard for him to do, but at the end of the day, he knew it's the right thing to do. So that kind of ties all 3 of the theories that we just discussed a few minutes ago back together.
It kind of relates to he knew what the rules and principles was. He had to think about what the consequences would be if he told,
Definitely.
and then he actually did what he was supposed to do because it was what was good.
Definitely.
So now I'm going to ask you all a question about kind of some challenges that you all may face. So what are some leadership challenges that you might expect to face in the future, and how have these leaders that we interviewed handled these challenges?
Well, I mean, one challenge that all 4 of us are going to be facing, like we're all going to be graduating in May, hopefully getting out into the workforce that the 2 men we interviewed were. So they like gave us some tips, you know, just like stay confident, stay true to like what you know, be ethical, do the right thing at the right time.
Thank you.
I think another challenge is, and this is something Dr. Bentley touched on, is having to fire people you're close to. Maybe you recruited them to be a part of your organization or your department, developing relations over time, and then maybe they make a mistake, but you have to hold them accountable, and you have to fire someone that you're maybe one of your best friends, but you have to do the right thing.
Another one too, Russ actually brought up in his interview, was more on a more personal level. A lot of times when we think of challenges, especially, you know, in this type of work and this type of class that we're doing for leadership, you think of more the workforce. But there's also a personal side to challenges. One that Russ brought up was becoming a father. So, you know, something that, you know, us 4 do hope to do one day, have kids of our own. And, you know, he said it made him grow up really fast. You know, learning to be a parent's a big job. It takes patience. You have to have a lot of patience to be a parent. He said that, you know, kind of relating that back to class and with life too, you have to be patient. If you want to accomplish the challenges, you know, you have a goal set out there, and you want to meet that goal. You have to be patient. It's not going to just happen overnight.
So kind of like whether professional or personal, like you always have your goal and you can be very goal oriented, but a lot of that's going to be like Kaden, you spoke about relationships. You know, that's a relationship style where you may have to fire that person, and definitely with parenting, that's a relationship style itself.
3 things: the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll keep it really simple. Ask folks what they see you doing that's really good, and truly listen, and try to understand what they mean when they tell you that. Number 2, ask them what they think you're doing just kind of all right at. Right? That's kind of the good. It's okay. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's good. But most importantly, ask folks to be truth tellers about the good, the bad, and then finally the ugly, right? Truth telling is about having individuals who also want you to be the best version of yourself, but your first opportunity as a leader is to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to understand that you're imperfect. There is, in my mind, no such thing as perfect. There's the pursuit of being better, right? Allow yourself to be vulnerable and solicit the feedback so that you can continue to be better. But that means owning it.
Don't give up on your principles and values. If the organization doesn't doesn't believe in what you believe in, then don't put yourself through that. You're gonna be miserable. But try to find an organization where they have the same values and principles that you do. And then once you're there, be open to new ideas, try new things.
We've talked a lot about how these leaders, how they lead, their styles, and some nuances they have there. What are some things that have helped these individuals to develop as leaders, and what can we take from what we've learned to develop ourselves as leaders?
We've looked at both individuals, and we feel like three things that help them advance and develop as leaders are the situations they've been in, the opportunities they've been presented with, and their support systems, and that could be personal and professional. Like as far as situation, I know both individuals were put in difficult situations where they knew the right thing they needed to do, but it wasn't the easy thing to do. Like they both could have just like looked past it and not worried about it, and not fired anybody, but they knew the right thing to do and they did.
So talking about opportunities, they've both been kind of yes men in their career, and even though like the opportunity wasn't always appealing, like it wasn't something they necessarily wanted to do, they said yes, they took the opportunity, and it made them grow as leaders because they were faced with challenges that they wouldn't have been faced with before, things they didn't really necessarily know, so now they understand and how to work through those opportunities.
I guess going back to the support system too as well. You know, as he said, you know, it's both professional and personal. So going back to the example we used earlier with Russ, as a support system family, as a personal point of view, then in the professional setting, your coworkers and your employees who work for you, they're your support system. But you also have to keep those separate, your personal support systems and your work support systems.
So what are some leader development concepts that were reflected by these interviewees?
Relating back to kind of what we've learned throughout the semester and also growing on that through these interviews, the biggest one would probably be the Center for Creative Leaderships, the ACS model. Just a quick breakdown of that, it's the assessment, challenge, support model. So it's basically a roadmap of opportunity for you to get things done, but also incorporating the support systems into it as well.
Okay, thank you. And so what might we do to develop as leaders because of what we have learned from the model they've kind of presented to us and kind of their opportunities and the support systems that you talked about?
I guess tying it back to the ACS model itself, you know, when you're faced with challenges, well, first, you know, any situation, you know, you have to assess that situation as a challenge, because there's always going to be opportunity for success. There's also going to be some things where it could go the wrong way and things not go well. But with those, keeping it tied with support, you know, in the workforce, as we interviewed both of these two, what we took away from them is that's a big part of leadership is, you know, being able to rely on people who you work with and your independent, in your family and your relationship style as well. You know, and those are your followers. So you have to be able to rely on your followers, and they also help build you up.
So kind of in layman's terms, you have an issue, you look at it, you look at all possibilities, you then challenge that issue both in different directions, you know, more than one way to skin a cat, and then you begin to build your leader followership development there to get the issue solved. All right, guys, so finally I want to ask you three more questions. So what is one principle of leadership that we can learn from the individuals that we interviewed?
Both of them, something that both of them touched on that all ethical leaders have in common is they have the mentality, and they instill it in their employees as well and in their personal life to respect others. So some more in-depth on that is treating others as ends rather than as means, keeping your goals in mind as an individual and as a team member.
Okay. So what can we learn about leadership from our interviewees?
Something we all talked about that we believe is important is to be, that we learned from them, is to be relationship oriented, that the followers are more important for the leader than the leader is for the followers. Without the followers, the leader will not be successful, and they have to work as a cohesive unit to achieve the common goal.
So what behaviors that we might seek, like what practices, what might we seek, or skills to develop ourselves as leaders based on what we've learned from our interviews that we conducted?
I believe a great practice to get in the habit of doing would be doing the right thing at the right time every time. You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of comes back to just being ethical, because that's going to get you all, or get everybody a long way.
Thank you. So I want to thank you all for answering these questions for us. Also, thank you to Dr. Jason Bentley and Mr. Russell Mass for letting us conduct these interviews. So thank you, guys.